Mike McCarthy earlier this week spoke with the media at the mini camp, which is now broke for the Dallas Cowboys. They won't be on the field until they get to Oxnard for training camp. But he said that they're going to try to incorporate Dak Prescott's legs more in this 2022 season. Now, last year we knew Dak was coming off of that horrific fractured ankle that he suffered in 2020. But what do you make of this? Dak Prescott, because as a fan, I wanted to see him move a little bit more there because I think that's another element to his game that they didn't really tap into. And I get it. He had the ankle thing that he was coming back from. Then he had the calf mid-season that he never really got over, I thought, in the second half of the season. But what do you make of Prescott now going back to the mobility that we saw earlier in his career in addition to what he can do from the pocket?
I think it has to be strategic. I think unless you're Josh Allen and you're bigger than most of the linebackers in the league now, and you can kind of dish it out, I think it's still you run the risk of getting hurt. But I do think you have to demonstrate the ability that your quarterback can run. And why is that? Okay, so what's the key down in football, right? The key down in football is third down. So we know that, like, for example, Cooper Kupp, as great of a year as he had last year, he had 81 third down conversions with catches. That's remarkable, right? It's just flat out remarkable. And so, and everybody knows the ball's going to Kupp. So when they double Kupp, the in and out, do all that stuff. But when your quarterback doesn't move, it helps you on third down because you don't have to worry about him running for the first down. This is what affected Russell Wilson last year. When Russell didn't move and convert third downs, he had the lowest third down conversion rate of his career last year in Seattle. You know, the defenses can play two-man. They can turn their back on the quarterback. They're not worried about it. You know, and so when you have the threat of the run, and I'm not saying call quarterback draw every 3rd and 5. I'm saying, hey, if the right tackle sets wrong and the guy gets beat and you can take it to the corner, you got to take it. And all of a sudden, that kind of takes the starch out of the defense and say, okay, look, let's just let's keep our eyes on the quarterback a little bit more here. You know, and there's a balance that has to be there. So, and I think it's a smart play for Dallas. I wish they would utilize Zeke more in the passing game. I was asking somebody a couple of weeks ago about Zeke in the passing game. And, you know, I think people misread Zeke a lot, and I certainly do. But apparently Zeke is a force in that locker room. Like, the players look up to him. He's a true leader on that team. He works diligent. He's in there with Prescott every morning, watching tape, going over things, doing the stuff he has to do, you know. And I think as his game, and he's a power back now. He's not quite the elusive back that he is. And Pollard, who's a little bit limited in protection, affects him. And I think what Zeke does too, because of the wrist and the injuries he sustained, it affects his ability to protect. So they've got to make up for that lack of loose play from Zeke with Prescott's feet. And I think they need to do it. I mean, look, let's face it. I don't know how you feel, but if you think the Cowboys are going to win the East and you think the Cowboys have any chance to advance to the playoffs, Prescott as the MVP might not be a bad play.
Yeah, no, I mean, you already know he's going to get the publicity if the Dallas Cowboys are really good. Since they're America's team, they're always at the front of mind when it comes to NFL content there. But I thought, like, the point you made about Zeke is really why I wanted to see more from Dak as a runner, because I think that can really ignite this running game. I don't know if you can do some read option stuff in the red zone or what have you, because we're seeing quarterbacks being implemented into the ground game. I mean, look at the game last year between the Bills and the Chiefs. I mean, you had Josh Allen, he had 68 rushing yards. Patrick Mahomes had 69 rushing yards. They were the leading rushers for their teams in that game that was 42-36. Quarterback movement and being an athlete at the position can give you that extra level, which can maybe combat some of that too high stuff that we saw early on, kind of flummox those young QBs.
You know, and you have to do it. Like, Josh, you sit there and you call a coverage where your defense is turned to Josh Allen. That's a problem. But what really becomes the problem is if you don't coordinate your pass rush like a dance team. Like, if you're rushing Josh Allen, you know, you've got to say to your right end, you've got to rush this way and force him to his right. Or you've got to say to the left end, you got to rush him inside and we got to move him to his left. Like, that's the choreographing that needs to take place. I don't think enough defensive coordinators in the league spend time with the defensive line coach really going over that. Like, you control the quarterback how you control the rush. And guys like Mahomes and guys like Allen, they hurt you. And if you get that out of Dak, it'll open up some things. And I think the question mark for me is, can Kellen Moore advance himself to another level as a coordinator? And I'm not sure that he can. I think he needs a little bit of help. I wish McCarthy would be more involved with it. We shall see.
Yeah, and it's a big year for Kellen Moore there because the wide receiver situation is not as good as it was heading into last season. Amari Cooper's now in Cleveland, Cedric Wilson's in Miami. You have Michael Gallup coming off the ACL, so a lot of the weight is going to be placed on CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz. CeeDee Lamb has said he's ready to be the number one wide receiver. Well, we're going to find out week 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but Kellen Moore has to get creative because he doesn't have the mismatches across the board like they might have had in years past there. So the Dallas Cowboys, always interesting.
I think he needs to prove that he can get the ball to his best player. I
Yes.
mean, last year,
Yes.
you know, I mean,
Thank you
here's
for
the thing
saying
you got to
this.
say to here's the thing you got to say to yourself. Everybody knows Cooper Kupp's getting the ball, and yet he still gets it.
Yep.
You know, and he had I think he had 169 targets. He had I don't know. He led the league in catches, right? So it was the numbers were incredible. You know, everybody. Hunter Renfrow was getting the ball, and yet he still had an 82% getting it. You know, it's how you utilize them, what you do to motion them, how you get them in the formations, and I think they've got to do a better job of that. When the game, like one thing you hang around like guys like Musselman and Crean, you know, the one thing basketball coaches always say, and Musselman's really was affected by the great Chuck Daly, is we got to get the ball to our best player when the game's on the line. Like we can't have somebody take a shot that can't make it. You got to get the ball to your best receiver when the game's on the line.
Yeah, and that's, to me, that was one of my biggest frustrations with the Dallas Cowboys offense last year. I mean, CeeDee Lamb led the team in targets with 120. In no world, and I think Dalton Schultz is a nice player, but in no world should Dalton Schultz and Amari Cooper have the same amount of targets. You're just doing something wrong philosophically from an offensive standpoint there, both of them with 104 targets. I thought that Cooper, he has his injuries and he's had his issues, but that's a guy that you got to get him the football, and they didn't do that enough last year, and unfortunately, things kind of didn't pan out after they won the division.
Yeah, you know what I think about Cooper? What I think it's interesting. They tell me Cooper really, this is fun. You're going to laugh at this, right? But one of the things about Cooper, he disappears in games, and sometimes he disappears because he takes himself out. Like I'm told reliably, he hates cold weather. Think about that, Femi. Think about what I just said. He hates cold weather. He's playing in Cleveland next year, Femi. Yeah. He hates cold weather.
I've had my suspicions. He had a funny
where he came out because it's too cold. And he's playing in Cleveland next year, and he's making $20 million a year. For all the junk you want to throw at Moore, and I do too. I killed Moore. I mean, I'm critical of Moore, but I think you got to be more critical of Cooper because I'm not sure Cooper wants it. He doesn't like cold weather, Femi.
I had sneaky suspicions about that because when he first got to the Cowboys, when the Raiders traded him to Dallas, and Aaron Andrews asked him a question after one of the games. It was after the Eagles game late in the season when Dallas kind of really positioned themselves to win the division back in 2018. And she asked him, hey, what's this been like, this ride the last 6 games? Now you're in Dallas. He said, the one thing that he said, I mean, the facilities have been awesome. And like, he was talking about the facilities. So me and my brother, we have a running joke. We call Amari Cooper Mr. Facilities because he likes to play indoors on the fast surface there. And any cold weather game, it's a little dicey. And the one thing that always sticks in my mind, the end of the 2019 season there, Cowboys were at Philadelphia. It's kind of, it's late in the season, Philadelphia. It's always cold weather. And on the last drive, there was a 4th down there for Dallas to try to tie the game up, I believe it was. And Cooper was on the sidelines. And that, to me, that always stuck with me. I was like, what in the world is going on?
I asked somebody about that, and they said he doesn't like cold weather. That's a fact. I haven't run the numbers on what he performs in under 40 degrees, but it's like when I bitch about Tua when he plays in rainy weather or snow and cold, like you got to factor that in. I wonder if Cleveland really knows that the kid doesn't like cold weather.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.